What is up, guys, and welcome to the Overflow. We've been praying about this for such a long time, and we're so expectant, but also just so excited to film this first episode. And episode 1, we got Drew White here talking with us. Drew, how we feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. Feeling good. I'm excited.
I'm glad you could be on it, bro. So today, you can kind of tell by the title, but what we're going to be talking about is faith that doesn't waver. And when I was just thinking about this, a story that came to my mind was I was on a plane on the way back from South Carolina the other week, and I was just talking with one of my friends about like how the Lord was moving areas of our life, that it's going really well, but then areas that we felt like we were building a gap between us and God and we could work on. And something he challenged me to was, he asked me, have you ever read Luke 16:10? And I just got my Bible out and I was like, no, I can't remember that off the top of my head. And that verse says, those who are faithful in little will be faithful in much, and those who are unrighteous in little will be unrighteous in much. And he brought up this from 2 days ago. So I'd skipped class to go to South Carolina so that I could go to these things. But for my math class, we have an attendance question that tracks if we're there or not. So I just got one of my friends to send it to me. And I completely forgot about it, just gone about my day. But he was like, that's just something I'd be prayerful about and see if the Lord's calling you to obedience and little things like that. And I don't know about you, but like when I start thinking about little things, stuff starts coming to mind. But then at the same time, my brain starts trying to justify them. And a question that I feel like we all need to be asking ourselves is like, is the thing we're trying to justify building a relationship with God, or is it building a wall between us? So, and being obedient in little things like that, like what you've been walking the way for a while now. And obviously we're still figuring it out. It's something that I work on daily because I fail in little things all the time. But what's like an area of your life you've seen the Lord deliver from that? Struggles, advice you would have just for faith in little things compared to big leaps?
Yeah, 100%. So I actually did YWAM for the first half of 2024, which is a 6-month program. Stands for Youth with a Mission. And I went to Hawaii for 3 months, and then they sent us out 26 different teams, 26 different nations for 3 months.
Come on, bro.
It was awesome. And so when I was in Hawaii, I really just got in the rhythm of spending time with the Lord daily in the morning, waking up, setting a rhythm in place, and just, dwelling on the word and what the Lord is saying to me. And I don't know, it was so impactful those first 3 months with my walk with Jesus in general, and praying for the people in Cyprus, which is the nation I ended up going to, just praying that their hearts would just be open to, what the Lord had for them. And then finally going to Cyprus, and the conversations that I had there with those people, I mean, they were just so fruitful, and it was just amazing what the Lord was doing there while we were in Hawaii, and then when we went to Cyprus.
Bro, come on.
Yeah.
It's so sick. Just like seeing how before you even went, his presence was already there.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, now we're talking about finding that little thing. And I know for me, like nicotine was a huge one for me in high school. Like those like nicotine pouches, I was doing them all the time. And it was like, I find it so easy, or as believers, especially our age, to justify certain sins because we deem other ones as greater. And it's like, I'm not doing this, but so like this doesn't matter that much. Or like, no, this one's going to slip under the rug with God because all these people over here, like they're doing that. And that is like exactly what Satan wants to get you in the rhythm of, because if he can get us to focus on the magnitude of the sin, he's already won.
Yeah.
Because if our focus on the magnitude of the sin, then our view of sin is completely off, because we shouldn't be focusing on the magnitude of the sin. We should be focusing on the magnitude of the Savior, that our sin put him there on the cross to die for us. And so identify the very little. We have that. And then what do we do with that? Like we can't just sit and say like, okay, identify the little. So now we have the next step of like pursuing that faith in the small. And Justin, we were talking earlier, like something that really came to mind was a story in Daniel 3, which like if some of y'all don't know that, it's King Nebuchadnezzar basically builds this big idol of himself and is commanding the whole nation to worship it. And there's 3 people that refuse to bow down, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he calls them to the front and says, I have this big fiery furnace right here, and if you don't bow down this time, I'm going to throw you in there. And again, command, and they don't waver. And he cranks the furnace up so high that the guards that open the door literally disintegrate and die from the fire. And they put them in there, and they see a 4th person with them, and they come out untouched. And at the end of the story, Nebuchadnezzar just starts worshiping their God because there's no other way they could have survived. But the outcome isn't really what I'm trying to focus on. It's that story when we read it. I think a lot of the times we as Christians are like, yes, Lord, put me in the face of the fire, put me in the face of a ruler, put me in a situation where I can take this step against this big thing. But like, when I'm really honest with myself in most seasons, and I think if most of us were honest, it's unrealistic for us to expect to stand up in the face of a ruler when we aren't even willing to have those conversations with people in our day in, day out lives because we're scared of being judged or someone cutting off a relationship. And I think that's so powerful to like really think about the roots. And like, I can see that in Hawaii. I know y'all planted a church there.
Yeah.
That's still, why don't you just tell them a little bit about how that kind of started? And because obviously that didn't just come to be when you got there. It was like something the Lord had been stirring there through Hawaii. So why don't you kind of explain some of that?
Yeah, 100%. So we got there and we have contacts who are families who already live there. And so they can just kind of help us with whatever we need, you know? And so I think someone died actually, which is really sad.
Yeah.
So a dude owned this building and he died, and the contacts got the building, and it was, I mean, in the back of this alley, really, really sketchy place. And then you just go in this room and there are pews and a big cross on the wall. And it was, I mean, it was insane. It was so cool. And Cyprus is split into 2. So there's one half of Cyprus, which is a Greek side, and then the other half is the Turkey side. And so Turkey is a closed nation. You can't spread the gospel in Turkey. But Cyprus is a republic of Turkey. So it actually is an open nation, which is crazy. And so we got the church building, and we decided to, you know, we were just like, all right, let's go to the college campuses. Let's go to the streets. Let's go eat food and talk to the waiters. And let's just go find anybody that we can talk to and have conversations with them and invite them to our church. And so that's what we did. We split up groups of 3. We went out. We went to Cyprus International University, and we were there for maybe 4 or 5 hours a day, just evangelizing, talking to people, inviting them to church. And it was so impactful. I mean, the first Sunday that we hosted, I think maybe 25 people came, which was insane. Like, it packed out the whole room, and it was awesome. We would worship, and then someone would give a sermon, and then we would just have time to talk and just keep pouring into these people, it was just so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. And like, what's cool about that too is like that church there, like it wasn't, like I said this earlier, but like it wasn't a decision that was made there. Like there were people praying into that for 3 months, and like, it's so easy to rush into it. I mean, the same thing with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It was like, they didn't decide that they were going to die for the Lord when King Nebuchadnezzar asked, because like Luke 9:23, whoever follows me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and come after me. And it's like, they didn't decide to die when King Nebuchadnezzar said, bow down to me. They decided to die the moment they started following Jesus. Yeah. And it's like, that's the kind of faith that plants churches in Cyprus and sparks a revival in generations that like, in a world that's so me consuming. And I think another story that comes to mind is like story of David. And like, I mean, when I say David, like what's the main story you think of?
The David and Goliath.
Yeah, like that's what everyone thinks of. Yeah. Like you grow up in Bible school, that's what you talk about. And what's cool about that story is what happens before. Like I've gotten in this whole thing of like starting to look at all these big stories and then looking at their life before, because there's so much importance. And like, that's the season that a lot of us are in right now, not the giant season, the shepherding season.
Yeah.
And he gets anointed with oil and proclaimed that he's going to be king, and is a shepherd for nearly 15 years, which like in itself can be a whole message. Like if I'm anointed king and then I have to go back to the field to be a shepherd, I'm going to be like, all right, God, like I thought I was going to be king. Like, what is this? And I get really impatient, but like, that's not even what I want to talk about. It's like, he was content with shepherding the flock that was before him. And like, I just think about how many times he probably slung a rock at like a wolf or something, protecting those sheep. And it's like he was content protecting the sheep in front of him. And because the Lord was preparing him, he was able to protect a nation from a giant. And the sickest part is that it was the same exact weapon. It's like, the Lord's like, no, you don't need this armor. You don't need this sword. Like, I've been preparing you with this sling. And it's like, what is my sling right now? Like, what is it that the Lord is preparing me to make a stand in a big season? And it's like, I just think there's so many moments in the Bible where the Lord reveals himself through the wandering, like through the desert. And I don't know, like coming to Auburn, like we're both freshmen here at Auburn. So that was a big step for us. Like you were obviously at YWAM for 6 months. And then it's like, you come back to the States and you probably are having like, feel like you had this big giant moment and then you're back to normal life. And so coming to Auburn, like what have you seen? How have you seen the Lord move through that and kind of like watching him prepare your heart in Cyprus to come back to the States too?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big change just from 6 months of just focusing on every day, just focusing on the Lord and focusing on just Cyprus and those people coming back to, school and college. It's a big change, but it's just really showed me the Lord's faithfulness, and finding a group of guys that, really push me towards following Jesus every day and push me in my faith has just been so, so cool. And I've just been so like thankful, and the Lord's just been so faithful in that season of life and the transition as well. Cause it's hard, you come back and you're like, dang, everything was great back in Kona and everything was great back in Cyprus. And then you come here and you're like in, biology class and it's just like, well, what is life? Like, well, why can't I just go out and tell people about Jesus? Yeah. Which you still can, but it's really just showed me that, there are different seasons of life for everything. And we're just being prepared and equipped for the next season,
Yeah, come on,
and
bro.
just the season we're in, be where our feet are. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I guess kind of like what else I'm trying to ask is, I think a lot of people listen to this and they're like, okay, well, I didn't go to YWAM. I didn't do this huge thing. I haven't felt this huge anointing or don't know what the Lord's preparing me for. So before YWAM and after YWAM, because you've done both, like you've gone and evangelized and been the hands and feet of Jesus in a nation that doesn't know a lot about him. But then you're also in Auburn, which is like a Bible belt, and we have awesome churches and awesome schools. So like, how have you been able to kind of find your worth here, and what has that practice of obedience kind of looked like in college and like spending time with him and trying to figure and navigate that out? Because I mean, high school too is very similar, I feel like.
Yeah. So I think I know, not everyone gets the opportunity to go overseas and stuff, but there's definitely, a mission field everywhere you are.
Yeah. That's so good.
And
bro.
So just being here in Auburn, there's, the church has been a huge impact in my life. We both go to Auburn Community Church, which is, just a great church. And just going around town and seeing how the Lord's moving with everybody here, it's just like there's a huge field where you can just go and be a light. Like I remember one time me and Cooper actually went into Buc-ee's and we were joking around that day, and I was like, yo, Cooper, come here. And we went up to this random old guy, and Cooper thought I was messing with him. And and I was just like, hey, my buddy here wants to know if you know the good news. And that just led into a conversation that went on for about 20 minutes. And he was just, we found out he was Muslim, and we got to pray over him. And I mean, that was a cool story.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a lot of opportunities in your town, wherever you are,
Yeah, 100%, dude. And
Yeah.
that's the thing is like little things like a Buc-ee's or a restaurant you're in, just like praying that the Lord would open your eyes to people around there. And I mean, worst case scenario, you feel a little nudge and you don't feel like it's from the Lord, or you don't know if it's from the Lord or in your head. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? You go up to him and share the gospel?
Exactly.
Like, come on.
Yeah,
Like,
and that goes back to, being faithful in the small things, because I feel like faith is, the Lord telling you something, you acting on that,
Yeah.
And you can just be in a restaurant and you can be like, oh, that guy the Lord is highlighting that guy to me. I need to go talk to him. And just being faithful in that, even though maybe it's just you, maybe it's the Lord. You go talk to him. What's the worst that can happen? You talk about the Lord,
Yeah,
So
100%. And like, I want to brag on you a little bit, because something that Drew's done a lot for me is kind of challenged me in this part of my faith. And even in like Ubers, like every Uber I've been in with you, you just like start talking to the person, get to know a little bit, and like, do you know about Jesus? And it's like that simple question I've seen lead into some awesome conversations. And it's like, not everything has to be super uptight and like reciting scripture over someone. It's like, no, like you genuinely are curious about them and you want to know where they grew up and stuff like that. And then you just like, do you know about Jesus? And like, this is what he's done in my life. And like, this is what he promises to do for everyone. And I love what you said about how there's a mission field everywhere, because it's just, I mean, Jesus says he's not coming back until every single person that is supposed to hear the gospel has heard it. And I mean, you might have been in a nation in Cyprus where there's a big bulk, probably over 50%, if not a lot. What percent of that country is Christian?
It's a Muslim nation.
It's like 80% roughly Muslim, maybe more.
Yeah, I think so.
So like, you're in a nation where 80% of the people are not Christian. And whether you're in a nation where 80% of the people are not Christian, or you're in a city where 10% of the people are not Christian, it's a lot of people that haven't heard the gospel, or a lot of people that don't believe in God. And that's a huge mission field no matter where you are. And just kind of like closing to wrap it up soon, a story that I was told the other day that I thought was so cool and such a good mindset to practice faith in the small is like, when people would travel with their rabbi back in the day, they'd be in groups and basically they're just following him, learning and being trained up and discipled until they eventually become a rabbi. And when they're following them, they follow their rabbi so close that they literally have their dust of the rabbi all over us. And I feel like it's so easy for us to kind of like play this game of tag with God. Like, we're going to be so close to him and we get super comfortable, and then we get just far enough to where he's almost out of sight. We run back and get right there. And it's like, if we want to be faithful in the small, like, we want to be covered with the dust of Jesus and like follow that, pursue that. And no one's going to be perfect at it. Like, me and you are in no way perfect. We're people that fail at this all the time. But I'm sure in Hawaii, in seasons like that, when you went and planted a church, you were able to look back at the times that you were following him that closely. And that was when the boldness came to do that, because you're not going to start a church on your own accord. Like, it's not what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's got to be the Lord moving through it. And I don't know, do you have any closing thoughts with that? Like, following the Lord closely?
Yeah, I feel like really it all starts in the quiet place, in the mornings when you're spending time with the Lord, or throughout the day when you're just talking with God, it really, I feel like I'm more in tune with his voice. Yeah. I feel like I'm more humble, I'm more joyful, and that's where all those cool moments happen when you're, in tune with the Lord's voice and when you're spending time with him.
Yeah. Yeah, bro. That's fire. Well, thank you for coming on. We're going to try to get episodes out every other Monday. So thanks for tuning in with us. We're so excited about this first episode. We'll see y'all again soon.